I was told to never smoke cigarettes, as they would screw up your health, and particularly give you cancer. Well, it didn't matter, because this review gave me cancer. I have never experienced the sensation of being butthurt more than I have right now, and in all honesty, it's a bad sensation. I mean, seriously, what did she expect? Did she even play one of the 3 games?
Does she even know what a remasterization is?
This was not just stupid, but a plain insult to Pokemon fans in particular.
I just feel like strangling the people who made this review.
My tip is to either fire the reviewer or make her review waterless games forever. Modern studies estimate that the Earth's surface is roughly 71% water, which if you ask me, is just too much. Everyone has an opinion. Anyone could look at anything and arbitrarily decide what they think is based and what is cringe. But when do the opinions of an everyman become the opinions of a critic? What separates an average Joe from an angry one? A truly talented critic can transform art analysis into art itself. In some cases, a critic's opinion can be more entertaining than the art they're reviewing. It's a fine line the critic walks though. Lean too hard in one direction, and you risk losing the very voice that made you stand out from the crowd. Lean too hard in the other, and you risk robbing the art of its potential merit. Yet time and time again, one organization has failed to toe this line.
We keep trying to find this thing that was never really actually there.
Sonic was never good.
Sonic Mania is a stellar example of a retro revival done right.
The Imagine Games Network, a staple of gaming journalism in the late 1990s and early 2000s, a one-stop shop, an amalgamation of gaming media, they quickly became one of the most recognizable names in the industry, providing praise when it was deserved. As time passed though, some changes were made at IGN. Not an immediate or drastic change, but a slow, systematic rotting from the inside. Ironically, as the company's voice grew louder, the amount of people who actually listened shrank. And soon they began to voice some questionable opinions.
The high difficulty is an integral part of Dark Souls, the key to its ethos, and it shouldn't be considered a fault. It's also brutally unforgiving and inaccessible, especially at first. If you just play games to be entertained, then Dark Souls isn't for you.
Someday, someone is going to make an incredible alien video game that checks every box. But sadly, isolation is not it.
Advanced Warfare is granted a weight and importance that changes how Call of Duty feels.
The single player is nostalgic to a fault, dealing heavily in a satisfying, if straightforward, sort of chaos.
By the mid-2010s, most gamers' faith in IGN reviews had all but faded. They'd become the Funko Pops of video game journalism, a mass-produced, inoffensive, nameless product that was only enjoyed by the most focus group-tested consumer. But not me though, I'm quirky and different. God damn it. And soon enough, one of the most ill-equipped critical voices in the industry would tackle a franchise with one of the most dogmatically loyal and vocal fan bases of all time. You feel that? It's eerily calm outside, as it usually is before a storm. 2014, Nintendo is gearing up to release their newest entry in the Pokémon franchise. The older Pokémon games Ruby and Sapphire began to show their age, and it was time for an upgrade. So Nintendo conceived Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, still holding out for Sigma Emerald though. These games would be a remake of the original Ruby and Sapphire. However, simply remaking these games would come with some lofty expectations. It's tough to truly explain how beloved these games were and are. They released at a time when the world thought the Pokemon fad was over. Many believed that Pikachu had peaked and now we'd all move on. This put Ruby and Sapphire in a tough position, where they not only had the burden of creating a faithful sequel on a brand new console, but a sequel that could reignite a global phenomenon.
Don't fuck up.
It was a burden that weighed heavy enough on its developers that the game's director was even hospitalized from the stress of this game. But something art from adversity and the games were a smash hit. This generation of Pokemon was so deeply ingrained into our collective psyche that I'm sure most people still think a trumpet sounds like this. Now, over a decade later, all Nintendo had to do was follow the original recipe, maybe modernize some graphics, put these bad boys on the handheld headache simulator and call it a day. Nintendo gets cooking. A little white hat here, maybe some Wingull for texture. You can't forget to sprinkle in some. It's finally done. Now anyone could enjoy Nintendo's brand new dish. Yes, exquisite. Oh, delicious. Pass me some of that Himalayan sea salt. Oh yes, yes. I'll have what I'm having. Our old friend IGN sat down, took a bite, and began to write down their thoughts, completely oblivious how this review would bury their already desecrated reputation. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I just moved with my freaking mind!
Likewise, the path to becoming a meme is paved with sincerity.
Full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
And IGN was going to give this review their most sincere effort. November 18th. Still 2014. IGN's review of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire goes live. The introduction implies some flaws with the game, but they still gave credit where it was due. It mentions how the Dex Nav feature was a welcome addition for Pokephiles, which I know they're talking about like Pokemon fans, but I don't think you really understand what you're saying here. There was some criticism about the overabundance of mandatory HMs, a lack of type diversity, and tedium of navigating many water routes. Overall though, they still highly praised the game, but none of that mattered. No one cared about the specifics, because the entire review was boiled down into a few bullet points.
Gorgeous game. Lots of post-game content. But, too much water.
I'm sorry, what?
Annoying problems still exist, like the overabundance of water in both terrain and Pokemon.
Be afraid to get wet.
Of course there's gonna be too much water. It takes place in a bunch of islands. Hello? The Pokemon fans geared up, primed the meme cannons, and took direct aim at this review. There would be no mercy for IGN. Fans had gone full submersible, ready to show IGN what too much water really looked like. Within hours of its posting, the review was swamped with comments. Thousands of them.
You've got to be kidding me. Review system is a joke, man.
Seriously, what has the world come to? Criticizing a Pokemon game for having too much water was a truly insane statement. I mean, why is having a lot of water a bad thing, IGN? So the fans did a little research. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, a game with tons of water.
It's the best 3D Zelda.
Subnautica, a game that is basically only water. Its title is literally Submarine Water.
It's fantastical, fresh, and frightening.
IGN's review of the original Ruby and Sapphire had no mention of water being an issue, despite them being the same map as Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. 9.5, amazing. So for the fans, saying too much water was like knocking a remake for being too faithful to its source material.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
According to IGN, a point as trivial as too much water put these games on the same level as Madden NFL 25, FIFA 16, Forza Horizon 4 LEGO Speed Champions, and lower than the Nintendo Labo.
So I got you this box.
It was just such a confusing statement. The entire plot of Alpha Sapphire is a group of water criminals that love water Pokemon trying to flood the world with water. No shit, there's gonna be a lot of water. This would be like playing Metal Gear Solid and saying, yeah, it's fun, but there's just too much gosh darn sneaking.
That's why I'm here.
The worst part was the article header claimed that the games still hold water. So which is it? The memes were flying left and right. Rage had completely engulfed the Pokemon community.
The worst part is that they don't even want to change it. They don't even want to reconsider the review. They're so fucking stubborn because they know that their fanboys will them off and they'll be like, oh yeah, there's too much water.
2 days after the review was posted, an IGN tried quelling the chaos through a little tongue-in-cheek tomfoolery. That never goes wrong. They tweet, IGN review of San Francisco. Really pretty, but too much water. 7.8 out of 10.
That's it! I'm getting me mallet!
My god, it was now a worldwide phenomenon. Pokemon had now reached France. Not this time, but this time, when French Pokemon forum users were spamming the meme.
Like the overabundance of water in both terrain.
It was also on the Bungie forums. In an act of truly brave civil disobedience, someone made a playlist of good water games on IGN's website. Wild guess what they named it. Meanwhile, in the deepest recesses of a Pokemon fan's mind, they concocted the ultimate joke. In Pokemon Omega Ruby, the enemy faction, Team Magma, is hell-bent on destroying the Earth's oceans and increasing the world's landmass. IGN says the game has too much water, therefore, IGN works for Team Magma. Spam the keyboard, post to Reddit, lay updates ensue. Oh, Reddit gold.
Thank you, kind sir.
This adoration, though, was short-lived as the internet does what it does best with anything mildly funny.
This girl obviously works for
I knew
Team
IGN
Magma.
was must be confirmed
Today,
I get it!
Some were so baffled by the Too Much Water meme that they conducted rigorous experiments to finally prove if Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire does actually have too much water, and his conclusion might shock you.
But it's not just my opinion. I've looked into the raw game data itself. I've run multiple analyses. All we need to do is pull the data from here, and we'll be able to see out of all trainer battles how much it involved water Pokemon. In Ruby, that's 38.4. So even if you take out Team Aqua, for whatever reason, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire actually increase the frequency that you find water types on the early game remakes. That encounter rate is effectively doubled to 20%. On top of that, adding more like land tiles up here, Pokemon that resists water, if you exclude water type Pokemon. Just a fuck ton of ocean. I think you can actually say, based on data, that Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did in fact have too much water.
Wait a second, Accolade's conclusion can't be right. Too Much Water was just way too hilarious and awesome sauce of a meme to be wrong. It's here that those who were mindlessly enraged by the meme had unknowingly proved the core issue of this whole debacle. People didn't read the review. Most people either didn't read or watched the entire review and just skipped to the end, where all they saw was too much water.
I just want to see what the reviewer thought of it. Really? Too much water?
And to be honest, some of the criticism presented was valid. But even in 2014, we lived in a post-soundbite world, where even the smallest offhand comments can be recontextualized and memed to death. Here, let me show you. What's up, gamers? Welcome back to Cheesecake's review of Bloodborne. I am blown away by this game. It truly is the pinnacle of gaming. I love Bloodborne. The only downside is these fucking dogs are annoying. Welcome back to Cheesecake's review of Bloodborne. I love fucking dogs.
It's very stupid. It's not even like
A proverbial line in the sand was drawn, delineating the fans that actually read the review and those that posted this. We'll see soon enough that this line would eventually blur in the eyes of many. Really badly. But those that actually read and watched the review took to the lab to dissect IGN's points piece by piece. IGN said, it's not a new complaint, but Huang is still imbalanced type-wise, heavily favoring water. It feels like there are water Pokemon in nearly every battle. On its own, this doesn't sound as dumb as Too Much Water. After all, one of the biggest criticisms fans leveled against the 4th gen was its severe lack of fire types. The Hoenn region, though, is based on an island environment, so thematically and geographically this makes sense, the fans countered. IGN claimed that the water routes were tedious to navigate, except that Nintendo knew this was a problem since the originals, and made some changes in the remake, like certain Pokemon being able to surf faster, certain water routes being made smaller, and the area nav added so it was easier for people to navigate the more complicated routes. But screw all that, what about the wild encounters? Anyone that's ever played Pokemon before knows the worst part is surfing and getting catcalled constantly by tentacles.
Daddy, chill.
Nintendo said, we've got a brand new repel system that will automatically remind you when your repel runs out, to keep those pesky jellies at bay. There are too many HMs.
Yes, so?
It's called the Move Deleter. IGN said some smart updates were a positive thing in this remake. Well, hold up. Didn't IGN give Heart Gold and Soul Silver a worse score because it was a remake? What's going on here? IGN, you've sold out.
A big fat phony!
You're a bunch of hypocrites. You lost your identity. If you recall, though, IGN never had much of an identity to lose. In the midst of this controversy, many had forgotten that IGN is not a person, they're a conglomerate, with dozens if not hundreds of different critics, each with their own perspectives and opinions. Opinions that sometimes don't line up. Being a faceless company can have its advantages though. When people read the Too Much Water review and spam dislikes and hate comments, IGN could care less. It wasn't a personal attack for them, but viewer engagement. Fans thought that leaving an epic own on IGN's video was an absolute kill shot for the conglomerate that is IGN, when in reality all they did was cut off a single head of the Hydra. And since you couldn't kill the beast itself, maybe the other option was to beat the shit out of one of the heads, because Too Much Water came not from a company, but a single author. And so the absolute worst, and I must stress this, vocal minority of the Pokemon fandom oozed from the woodwork, ready to take things way too far and take it way too personally. And if things weren't bad enough, the author was the one thing a terminally online, unhinged gamer fears the most: a woman. No! Well, the comments were about what you expect.
Your life literally is as valuable as a summer ant.
Who did you sleep with to get this review? Too much water. 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 I hope she was fired. Death. It makes death. I thought women weren't supposed to make jokes. Are you like 12 years old? What the hell? Such vitriol, such anger, all over 3 simple words. The worst part was Too Much Water wasn't even written by the author. Apparently it was added in post-production to make her criticism of the type imbalances a more catchy bullet point. But this wouldn't stop the mockery, because even her own friends were making Too Much Water jokes to her face.
My friends will not stop
texting,
telling me that.
Oh, telling you that?
They're like, it's raining, Callie. Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, yes.
Ironically, we had a drought this year in California.
Yeah,
Too much water would have been a good thing.
Much water.
The memes just kept coming and coming. Earth, 7.8, too much water. You know what else has too much water? The human body. Wait. Oh my god. I have become too much water. I must be cleansed. Hey IGN, try playing New Vegas on hardcore mode. Trust me, you're gonna love it. IGN, you're so stupid. IGN, listen to this.
It's Fiji water.
According to the doctor that I spoke with from Texas Tech, there is such a thing as too much water.
You know what they say, you can't spell ignorant without IGN. Enough, IGN said. We are shutting off the water supply. No more water for anyone. Now, y'all get back here above sea level and face the music. You've been sending personal threats to our author. You've gone too far, buddy. Eventually, IGN would decide to drop the pros and cons bullet points altogether. A decision I'd imagine was partially influenced by the immense backlash from Too Much Water. Because some had really taken this way too far, and a meme had been beaten to death. It was taking a legitimate toll on the author. So some fans took a step back, reflected on this whole debacle, and did something truly incredible. They gave IGN the benefit of the doubt. Too Much Water, while admittedly a horrible way to summarize the criticism, was not entirely without merit. Evidently, Pokemon fans have been critiquing Ruby and Sapphire for the exact same thing since 2002. All IGN was doing was restating a problem the community themselves have said, but since IGN said it, now it was cringe. It wasn't that IGN was triggered at the sight of a wave crashing, but that the oversaturation of water types breaks the core design of a Pokemon game. I mean, one of the best parts of any Pokemon game is making your own unique team that can adapt to any situation, overcome any sort of type imbalance, and by the end of your journey, you're ideally supposed to have a well-constructed team of your favorite Pokemon. And the beauty of these games is that your favorite Pokemon are usually viable enough to beat the base game. For the most part. Everyone has their favorites, and it's reinforced by the games to use your favorites. But if your region is predominantly a single type, then what incentive is there to use your favorite Pokemon when a different one can steamroll most obstacles? Like Blaziken, I love you, but I'm getting my cheeks clapped by this big-ass walrus and I just want to tase it and move on, okay? Another big criticism was the excessive use of HMs, which is valid since most Pokemon players don't like them, and end up subjecting Bidoof or Lanoon to HM indentured servitude. Case in point, when Sun and Moon introduced the idea of removing HMs altogether, most fans were happy. But again, since IGN said it, cringe, Too Much Water, got him. Exploring water routes is arguably one of the weakest parts of any Pokemon game, because every single tile has the chance for a wild Pokemon encounter. These encounters happen constantly, and make exploring these routes a slog, which is why most people use a repel to avoid them altogether. IGN's point was that if you have to buy an item to make a significant portion of the game bearable, then maybe it's not the best game design. I'm sure during development, the idea of exploring the oceans on your Pokemon sounded like, but in game, it's more like, It's one of those things where the in-universe explanation works better than the in-game execution. Like how in Fallout 3, the only way you can access a post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C. is to crawl through the abandoned metro tunnels. Sounds cool in a brainstorming session, but playing it, brother, I am lost as hell. I think the train might be late, and this dude won't stop asking me for directions. I'm sorry, sir, but I do not know where Chevy Chase is. I think when given the chance to explain the review for more than 3 minutes, you realize how level-headed the Too Much Water review actually was.
There are 23 water-type evolution lines and 5 fire-type evolution lines. And I was like, that's redonkulous. If you want to be able to navigate the world without running back to a Pokemon Center and getting a new Pokemon, you have to have 8 move slots filled with these HMs.
Yeah.
By the end of the game. There's 3 water-type HMs, which means your water-type Pokemon is going to be bogged down a lot. Just the amount of water you have to navigate is just... it's a little much for me.
With some more context and a deeper understanding of what IGN's review was actually saying, maybe they knew more about water than we initially thought.
Has almost like a watery looking texture.
Sadly, for as nuanced as an argument IGN was trying to make, all most people remembered was simply too much water. And people sure remembered, because for better or for worse, everyone has an opinion. Today the review sits at a healthy 6,000 likes. With no dislikes. Good job, YouTube. Oh, man. And the written version is still subject to a little trolling here and there, even though IGN tried to scrub it from history, where most memes would remain in their respective fandoms. Nintendo thought this was hilarious, I don't know what to tell you, seeing as they're no stranger to memes in their games.
My body is ready.
In Pokemon Sun and Moon, if you take a picture, one of the comments you can choose is, well, that. Even last year, the official Pokemon Twitter dropped this banger of a tweet, to which the original author of the review hit them with a bruh. IGN would eventually lean into this meme as a form of outrage marketing of sorts. In their review for Avowed, they hope to capture lightning in a bottle twice, specifically citing there being too many bears.
Okay.
Fear not though, as our story does have a happy ending. After countless memes, IGN's Goldilocks journey was finally over, as they had found their perfect piece of media. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire had too much water. Pokemon Legends Arceus didn't have enough water, until there was something that was just right. Can you guess what it is? The Penguins of Madagascar movie. Oh my god, I give up. Go drink like a La Croix or something.
Rico.
My friends, become addicted to water.